Hi, I'm Helen Sandiford, one of the co-authors of Touchstone. It's a great pleasure to meet with you and have this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the Touchstone series. One of the very important strands of Touchstone is the vocabulary strand. Teaching vocabulary is a challenge. Learning vocabulary is a great challenge for students. And obviously it's very important that our students can learn vocabulary effectively. There are many ways that we can help our students learn vocabulary effectively. One of the ways is when we're teaching vocabulary, we want to encourage our students to know all there is about a word. Not just learn the word in isolation, but learn everything that there is to know about a word. For example, one of the things that's important to know about a word when we learn it in another language is the form of a word, all the different forms that any word can take. So for example, if we're learning a verb, let's find out and encourage our students to find out if there's a noun form of the word. So for example, if we learn the word discover, we can find out that there is a noun, discovery. If we're learning an adjective, for example, say we learn the adjective excited, is there a noun form of that word? Yes, excitement. Is there a verb form of that word? Yes, excite. Is there an adverb form of that word? Excitedly. So it's very useful for students to learn the forms of a word so that they can read these words and write them correctly. Another thing that's very important to train our students to do is to find out the meaning of the words. Obviously, when you learn a new word in another language, you need to know the meaning of the word. And in English, as in many other languages, words have obviously more than one meaning on many occasions. So for example, the word well. In English, well has many different meanings. As a noun, a well is a big hole that has water at the bottom of it. Well is a discourse item that we use to take time to think in a conversation, or when we're giving more complicated yes-no answers, rather than saying yes or no and we're giving complex answers, we often start our answer with well. And well also means to be healthy. I feel well. So it's important that students know the meanings of words so that they can get these meanings across clearly in conversation. The other thing that students need to know about a word when they learn it is how to pronounce it. Obviously it's important to learn the pronunciation of a word and practice the pronunciation of a word so that when they're having conversations they can be clearly understood. Another very useful thing that we can teach our students when they learn a new word is all the words that can be used alongside a given word. And we call these collocations. What words can frequently be used with a given word? For example, when we think of the word flood, we often use the word flood with flash, a flash flood. That's a collocation. They're frequently used together. We wouldn't say there's a quick flood. We'd call it a flash flood. Other words that are commonly used with the word flood are things like severe flood. Yeah? So it's important when we teach vocabulary that students understand and know the collocations or the chunks of language that can be used around any given word. These expressions that occur naturally in the language. The other thing that we can encourage our students to do when they learn a new word is to understand the use of a word. Students need to know the use of a word so they can use these words in the right context in language. In Touchstone, we teach vocabulary in a very specific way. The first thing we do is that we present the target vocabulary in a very clear context. So the vocabulary may appear in an article or in a conversation or in some form of realia that is authentic. So the topic and theme is very clear. So the presentation phase is very important for students. They can see how the vocabulary is really used in context. The second thing we want to do is have students practice that target vocabulary, and we provide activities for students to practice in a very controlled way. And then we want students to use the vocabulary. We have them log and learn the vocabulary, and we have all kinds of activities within the material for students to do this. But one of the things that's very important in this final phase is that students have an opportunity to practice using the vocabulary in a very personalised way. We want students to engage with that vocabulary and use it for their own examples, their own lives, and sort of relate it to their own personal situations. And these practice exercises are much more open. They're not as controlled as in the previous phase. So this phase of presenting the vocabulary, practicing it, and then practicing it again in a very personalised way, a very typical ways that we model and practice the vocabulary in the material.